everybody, it's Zach, and I'm here today to do a wrap-up. I haven't done a wrap-up in quite a while, so this wrap-up is going to include books that I've read from the month of March to the end of July. The first book I have to show you is Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. This was a reread for me. I read it originally back when it was being adapted into a film, and I have to say I think I enjoyed it more the first time. The first time I didn't really have the idea of Channing Tatum in my mind, but this time when I was reading the book, everything that John said, I imagined it coming out of the mouth of Channing Tatum. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was The Big Summer by Jamie B. Laurie. I cannot say enough good things about this book. It is one of my favorites of the year. It is about a character named Will who's going through a rough time back at school, so he decides to create a summer bucket list for himself. In completing items on this bucket list during the summer, he ends up finding himself, he finds love, he grows up. What I really like about the story is it has a very good LGBT theme without being over glorified in any way. The Big Summer earned 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I highly recommend it to all of you. The next 4 books I have to show you were a part of the hashtag a Eurathon theme for April. The first book is Bud Not Buddy by Christopher Paul Curtis. I read this book back in like 6th grade for school, and while reading it, yes, I did have a sense of nostalgia, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time. I feel like the plot is very lackluster. You have your climax of the story, and then it just kind of ends, and there's no real explanation or no real afterthought. This story would really benefit from like 6 or 8 more chapters after the climax. I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads. The next book I reread was Bringing Elizabeth Home by Ed and Louise Smart. This is a memoir written by Elizabeth Smart's parents about her kidnapping, and when I originally read this, I was really interested by it. I don't really think at the time I had much experience reading memoirs, but this memoir didn't really give us any other insight that wasn't already discussed in several press conferences, so for that reason I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Night by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel was a teenage boy during the time of the Holocaust, and this is a story about his time in the concentration camps. And it is so heartbreaking, but so beautifully well written. It takes quite a while to get through, just because I find myself having to take frequent breaks while I read this. But if you haven't read this, I highly recommend picking it up. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So if those 2 books weren't sad enough, I then picked up The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. This was again another reread for me, and oh my goodness gracious, I loved it just as much as I did the first time. I'm pretty positive that everyone on BookTube knows what this book's about. I love it, it's powerful, it made me feel things. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Stupid Fast by Jeff Herbeck. I wasn't really a fan of this book. I found it to be quite insensitive at parts. It's about a character named Felton whose mom is going through a rough time, and it's just his struggles with an absent mother. The one thing I did enjoy about this story is there is an interracial relationship, which I really feel like adds to the depth of diversity that's not in young adult literature currently. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The book I read was Shatter Me by Tara Mafi, and this book is basically literary butter. It is so easy to get through. You will find yourself just flipping and flipping and flipping the pages. I don't really remember that much about the plot, but I remember a lot about the characters, so for that reason I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Hollow City by Ransom Riggs. This is the sequel to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which was awesome, and this book is even more awesome. It's so epic. The adventure is awesome, the characters you learn so much more about, and the ending, what? I'm so excited for this series to continue, and I think Ransom Riggs is a genius. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was The Lost Song by Nicholas Sparks. This is the ugly Miley Cyrus mass paperback cover, but I do enjoy this story nonetheless. I think it's pretty easy to follow, and I really like that it is in multiple perspectives. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Winger by Andrew Smith. This is a story about a character named Ryan Dean West who goes to a boarding school and plays rugby, and it follows him through a year in his life. I really enjoyed this story. Andrew Smith does a phenomenal job writing as a teenager. I felt like I was really reading Ryan Dean's thoughts. I promise you that this book will cause an emotional breakdown, but it is still definitely worth the read. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book was an audiobook that I listened to during a car trip. It was Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. This book kept me fairly entertained. The story is about a plane full of beauty contestants that crash land into an island and have to live off the land to survive. This story uses great satire to illustrate major problems within society, and it was surprisingly extremely eye-opening, but I still only gave this book 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was How We Lived by Aaron Butler. This was a new adult novel, and I'm not even going to spend time going to the synopsis. I found it to be extremely cookie cutter, extremely predictable, and extremely rushed, and I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and that was being generous. And then I read This Star Won't Go Out by Esther Earl. This is a memoir written by Esther Earl and her parents. For those of you who do not know, Esther Earl was a nerdfighter that passed away from cancer. What I loved most about this book was seeing Esther's journal entries firsthand. She was a beautiful, beautiful person, and she was so wise beyond her years. I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads. The final book I have to share with you is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. I really enjoyed this story. It is about 2 friends, Sloane and Emily. Sloane randomly disappears one morning and leaves Emily with a list of 13 items that she must complete. And Emily believes that once she completes this list, she'll find Sloane. What I really like is while she is completing these items, she learns a lot about herself. She really finds herself, she finds love, she connects better with her parents. The only thing I didn't like is I felt their friendship was kind of toxic, and I think that was really overlooked in the story. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So those are the books that I have to share with you. I'm going to try in the future to be more consistent with my wrap-ups, but I just wanted to play catch up and get all of those out of the way. Like always, I will go ahead and leave my social media information in the description below, including my Goodreads. Feel free to add or follow me there. And if you liked this video, please feel free to subscribe and leave a comment telling me what you thought of these books if you have read them. And until next time, happy reading!